considering three nominations, Lauren Ali Khan and John Howard III to be Associate Judges of the District of Columbia Court of Appeals, and Adrian Jennings Noti to be the Associate Judge on the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. Welcome to each of you and to your friends and family for joining you here today, and congratulations on your nomination. And certainly want to thank all of you for your prior service and for your willingness to take on these positions. Will be challenging positions, and appreciate your willingness to serve the community. I'm pleased that we have three very highly qualified nominees before us. Throughout the nomination process, this committee has heard nothing but praise of your legal abilities and your professionalism. The D.C. Superior Court and the D.C. Court of Appeals function as the state-level trial and appellate courts within the very unique justice system here in the nation's capital. Both courts decide matters that impact the freedom, livelihoods, and safety of individuals and families across the district. Both courts are also suffering from extensive judicial vacancies. The Superior Court is extremely understaffed with 14 vacancies among its 62 judgeships, and 2 additional Superior Court judges are retiring in December of 2021 and January of 2022. According to the National Center for State Courts, the D.C. Superior Court has one of the highest per capita numbers of cases filed. 83,000 new cases every year are filed across its 5 divisions, and the vacancies have burdened every single division, especially during this pandemic. For the D.C. Court of Appeals, which has 9 judicial seats, there are 3 vacancies, and there will be a 4th vacancy upon an upcoming retirement. These vacancies will result in delays in more than 200 cases every year and a 50% increase in wait times within the last 5 years, leading to greater workloads for current judges and delaying the resolution for litigants. I'm pleased that we have 3 nominees to these courts here today, and I hope we'll soon see several of these seats filled. But again, thank you for your willingness to serve and for being with us today. I look forward to hearing from each of you through the course of this hearing. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Senator Langford for his opening comments.
Thank you, Chairman Peters. To the nominees, thank you. It is not simple to be able to get to this process for you and your families. Walking through this journey and this examination is a decision that you had to make early when you accepted the offer to be able to even go through this process. So I appreciate you walking through this. The committee takes these nominations extremely seriously, as we should. Nomination process for D.C. judges is different from that of Article III judges and other federal judges, and demonstrates the unique constitutional responsibility Congress has over the District of Columbia. Part of that responsibility, outlined in the Home Rule Act, is to ensure the district has well-qualified judges to serve in the city. It's vital that the district has qualified, unbiased judges to serve in both the Superior Court and Court of Appeals. The city faces a number of serious issues, from crime rates to evictions to broader constitutional questions, such as how the city treated houses of worship during the pandemic. I look forward to discussing these issues with you today and to get a better sense of how you'll approach the many difficult questions that will come before you if you are confirmed. I thank the committee for holding this hearing and look forward to speaking with each of you.
Thank you, Senator Langford. It's the practice of this committee to swear in witnesses, so if each of you would please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? You may be seated. Next, we'll have a video from Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton to introduce our nominees.
Chairman Peters and Ranking Member Portman, I appreciate the opportunity to introduce Lauren Ali Khan and Judge John Howard III to be Associate Judges of the District of Columbia Court of Appeals, and Judge Adrian Jennings Noti to be an Associate Judge of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. All 3 have the experience and credentials to be excellent judges. I especially appreciate that this hearing is being held so soon after the last hearing on D.C. Judicial Nominees. Lauren Alicon currently serves as the Solicitor General for the District of Columbia. She has served in that role since February 2018, and prior to that, served as the Deputy Solicitor General. Prior to her work in the Solicitor General's office, Ms. Alicon was an attorney at O'Melveny and Myers. Ms. Alicon also served as a Temple Bar Scholar with the American Inns of Court Foundation and was a Bristow Fellow in the Office of the United States Solicitor General. A magna cum laude graduate of the Georgetown University Law Center and a summa cum laude graduate of Bard College at Simon's Rock, Ms. Alicon clerked for Judge Lewis Pollack of the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania and for Judge Thomas Ambrose of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. Judge John Howard III currently serves as an administrative law judge for the District of Columbia Office of Administrative Hearings. He has served in that position since 2018, and prior to that position, he was an administrative law judge for the D.C. Commission on Human Rights. Prior to those positions, Judge Howard worked as an attorney for 3 law firms. Judge Howard is currently an adjunct professor at the Georgetown Law Center. He is a graduate of Georgetown Law and of Howard University. Judge Adrian Jennings Nati currently serves as a magistrate judge on the D.C. Superior Court, having served there since 2014. Judge Nati has served in 4 different divisions as a magistrate judge: the Family Court Division, the Civil Division, the Criminal Division, and the Domestic Violence Division. Before her appointment as a magistrate judge, Judge Nati served as a special advisor to the director of the Division of Program Innovation at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Child Support Enforcement and a senior program advisor there. She also served as the managing attorney for the D.C. Bar's Pro Bono program and was a clinic practitioner in residence for 4 years at the American University Washington College of Law. In addition to teaching at American University, Judge Nati was also a director and supervising attorney for the Domestic Violence Advocacy Project at the Rutgers School of Law and worked at the Safe Horizon Domestic Violence Law Project and the Center for Reproductive Law and Policy. A magna cum laude graduate of Georgetown University Law Center and a graduate of the University of North Carolina, Judge Nati served as a law clerk for Judge Carol Bagley Ammon on the Eastern District of New York. I appreciate the committee moving these nominees, and I look forward to continuing to work with you to end the vacancy crisis on the D.C. courts.
Ms. Alicon, you may now proceed with your opening comments.
Good morning, Chairman Peters, Ranking Member Portman, and members of the committee. I am honored and humbled to appear before you today as you consider my nomination to be an Associate Judge of the District of Columbia Court of Appeals. I thank you and your staff for holding this hearing, and I thank Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton for her kind introduction. I'd also like to thank the District of Columbia Judicial Nomination Commission and its chair, Judge Emmett Sullivan, for recommending me to the White House, and of course, I thank President Joseph Biden for nominating me. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge a few important people in my life. First, I owe an enormous debt of gratitude to my husband, Justin Noble, for his patience, encouragement, and support of all of my personal and professional endeavors. Next, I thank my parents, Mahmoud and Linda Ali Khan, who instilled in me the values of hard work and public service, my sister, Leah Ali Khan, who inspires me every day by living a rich and independent life as a woman with Down syndrome, and my extended family in St. Louis, Missouri, Daytona, Florida, and across the globe. Finally, I'm grateful to my friends and coworkers for their steadfast support. My father was born in British India, and after independence and partition, he and his family made the arduous journey to what is now Pakistan. Just over 50 years ago, he made another journey, this time to the United States, where he settled in Baltimore. My father is a cardiologist who spent time in the United States Public Health Service, and my mother was a nurse. So I learned from an early age that there's no higher calling than serving one's community. And while it is the South Asian stereotype that one's children should grow up to be doctors, my parents have supported, or at least tolerated, my decision to serve my community as a lawyer. I currently serve as the Solicitor General for the District of Columbia, representing the district and over 50 administrative agencies before the local and federal appellate courts. In my 8 years in the office, I have worked on over 2,500 cases in the D.C. Court of Appeals involving issues including administrative law, contract disputes, criminal law, employment discrimination, family law, the Home Rule Act, torts, tax, workers' compensation, and zoning. If I am fortunate enough to be confirmed, I would join the bench with a deep understanding of the court's docket and could quickly contribute to the court's pressing work. Before joining the district government, I had a broad-based appellate practice with both O'Melveny & Myers and the Office of the Solicitor General at the United States Department of Justice. In both positions, I had extraordinary opportunities to work on civil, administrative, and criminal appeals in the United States Supreme Court and appellate courts around the country. And I also had the great fortune to begin my career as a law clerk to Judge Lewis Pollack on the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania and Judge Thomas Ambrose on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. From watching their exemplary work as judicial officers, I came to truly understand and appreciate what it means to have a judicial temperament. Win or lose, parties left both judges' courtrooms knowing that they had been heard, and the resulting opinions were written in a way that could be understood by counsel and pro se litigants alike. It has been a privilege to serve the residents of the District of Columbia as its Solicitor General. With your advice and consent, I look forward to serving the residents in a new role as an Associate Judge of the District of Columbia Court of Appeals. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear before you today, and I look forward to your questions.
Judge Howard, you may now proceed with your opening comments.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Ranking Member, and members of the committee. I am honored and deeply grateful for the opportunity to appear before you as you consider my nomination, and I am thankful to your hardworking staff for holding this hearing. Thank you to Congresswoman Holmes Norton for her wonderful introduction. I am thankful as well to the Judicial Nomination Commission and its chair, Judge Sullivan, for recommending me to the White House. I was extremely grateful to have originally been nominated last year, and I remain honored once again to be nominated for a second time this year. I am grateful to Chief Judge Anna Blackburn-Rigsby and the judges of the D.C. Court of Appeals for their time, encouragement, and guidance. It is humbling to be considered to be a potential colleague of the group of jurists that this committee has assembled over the years. I am cognizant that I have never made it anywhere on my own, and for nearly 16 years, little would have been possible without my wife, Brandy Howard, who is present with us today. Especially our greatest blessing, our 2-year-old son, Jack, whose infectious joy permeates our lives, and who's represented today by his uncles, Wayman Peer and Mark Miller, who is also his godfather, present with us here. Thank you to the judges I began my career under, Alexander Williams Jr. and David C. Simmons. Thank you to my clerk family and my colleagues. I would also like to express gratitude for the love and support of my Georgetown Hoya family and my Howard family, both from Howard University and the colorful family that I was blessed to be born into. Watching eagerly from his farm in Greer, South Carolina, I would like to thank and recognize my grandfather, Reverend Mickey Fisher. I would also like to acknowledge my late grandmothers, Marlon Fisher and Tala Howard, who loved me without limit. Finally, I would like to acknowledge my late father, Pete Howard. I was blessed to be raised by him. Dad taught in action and in word, and a lesson he lived was to seek to command respect, not to demand it. And that started with respecting everyone in front of you as equals in God's eyes and practicing kindness. I hope that my back will be half as broad as his in the eyes of my own son. For over 7 years, it has been my privilege to serve my fellow citizens as an administrative law judge on 2 local administrative courts where I've presided over nearly 2,000 cases. I have worked to ensure that every party appearing before me can meaningfully participate in the adjudicative process and is heard, that the law is applied impartially, that my written decisions are clear, and that justice is provided in a timely fashion. At my current court, this is no small task, as our cases require written decisions, and each judge is responsible for hundreds of decisions yearly, all appealable directly to the D.C. Court of Appeals. Prior to becoming an administrative law judge, I was in private practice. I began my career as a judicial law clerk and then joined the law firm of Aiken Gump, Strauss, Hauer, and Feld in its first class of pro bono scholars. Following my wife's graduation from law school, we moved to Texas, where I engaged in solo practice before returning to the district. If I'm so blessed to receive your support and to be confirmed, I will remain committed to serving the residents of the District of Columbia. Thank you again for considering my nomination.
Thank you, Judge Noti. You may now proceed with your opening remarks.
Good morning, Chairman Peters, Ranking Member Portman, and members of the committee. I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today and for considering my nomination to be an associate judge of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. I would like to thank all of the members of the Judicial Nomination Commission, and specifically its chair, the Honorable Emmett Sullivan, for recommending me to the White House, President Joseph Biden for nominating me, and to Congressman Eleanor Holmes Norton for her kind introduction. I also wish to recognize and thank D.C. Superior Court Chief Judge Anita Josie Herring, former Chief Judge Robert Morin, and former Chief Judge Lee Satterfield, who appointed me as a magistrate judge in 2014. I would also like to thank my current magistrate judge and associate judge colleagues for all of their support. And I thank the committee staff for their work in preparing for this hearing. Today, I am pleased to be joined by members of my family. My husband, Adav Noti, is here supporting me today, as he has done for every day of our marriage. We are joined by our children, my daughter Lila, who is 11, and our son Emmett, who is 9. And even though it entails wearing dress clothes, they are excited to be here, and not just because they get to miss school. I'm also joined virtually by my mother, Carolyn Lockie, and I owe her for all that is good in me. I'm a proud native Washingtonian, and my children attend the same public elementary school and public middle school that I attended. My mother raised me all alone while working full-time, without any support and making it look easy. She instilled in me the value of education, of hard work, of respecting others, and the strength of willpower. As an adult, I now see that although she made being a single parent look easy, it most certainly was not. Her constant and ongoing sacrifices are a direct cause of my success. My whole family is a constant source of inspiration, support, and positivity, and I'm grateful to them for all they do to allow me to grow and to serve the citizens of the district. I'm currently a magistrate judge in D.C. Superior Court, where I have served since 2014. I've been honored to serve in every division of the court: family, criminal, civil, probate, and the domestic violence divisions. I've presided over thousands of cases in our most high-volume courtrooms, rendered verdicts in over 100 bench trials, and explained my decisions to numerous pro se litigants. Throughout my time as a judicial officer, I have cherished serving my city and playing a role in the fair and efficient administration of justice for district residents. Prior to my appointment as a judicial officer, I served the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement, where I worked to develop and implement federal child support policy and led national child support initiatives to improve access to justice. Before that, as a managing attorney at the DC Bar Pro Bono program, I arranged pro bono representation of family law matters in DC Superior Court. and as a clinical law professor and director of legal clinics, first at Rutgers School of Law, Newark, and then at American University's Washington College of Law, I taught students how to zealously represent people in crisis and supervised their representation of low-income clients in local courts. I also previously represented survivors of domestic violence and served as a federal law clerk for the Honorable Carol Bagley Ammon of the Eastern District of New York. My first case ever as a law student in the clinic at Georgetown University Law Center, there I had the opportunity to appear before the D.C. Superior Court. And since that first case, the D.C. Superior Court has become my second home. I'm humbled by the opportunity, if confirmed, to be an associate judge in D.C. Superior Court and to continue to serve the district. And I look forward to answering any questions you have today. Thank you.
Well, thank you. There are three questions that the committee asks of every nominee, and I'm going to ask each of you to respond with a simple yes or no. We'll start with Judge Noti when I ask the question, and then we'll work down the dais there. First, is there anything you are aware of in your background that might present a conflict of interest with the duties of the office to which you have been nominated?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
Second, do you know of anything personal or otherwise that would in any way prevent you from faithfully and honorably discharging the responsibilities of the office to which you have been nominated?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
Lastly, do you agree without reservation to comply with any request or summons to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of Congress if you are confirmed?
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. So the first question will be to all three of you, and we'll start with Ms. Ali Khan this time and work the other way to mix it up a little bit. But the first question I have for you is, for all three of you, is that the D.C. courts handle an extremely high volume of cases, and vacancies on both the Superior Court and the Court of Appeals have contributed to significant backlogs of cases. If confirmed, how will you manage your caseload efficiently while also ensuring that each person who comes before you has a meaningful opportunity to be heard? Ms. Ali Khan.
Thank you, Senator. If I were fortunate enough to be confirmed, I would run my chambers quite similarly to the way I run the current office of the Solicitor General for the District of Columbia, where we have over 500 cases a year, many of them in the D.C. Court of Appeals. I would make sure that I'd always be well prepared by the time of argument, that I would have read the briefing, that I would have done independent research, and that I would have a framework for how I thought questioning should go. I would then, after argument, promptly circulate draft opinions and promptly provide feedback to my colleagues who were writing opinions on the panel. So I think by virtue of having a deep experience with district law and a number of years practicing before the D.C. Court of Appeals, I would be able to get up to speed very quickly and dive into the court's pressing work and contribute to cutting down on the backlog. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Howard?
Thank you, Senator. In addition to what my colleague has stated and what I agree with, I would practice as I do now in my courtroom, and particularly when requests for continuance come in, review those carefully and only grant them for truly important reasons when there's good cause for it, to keep the cases moving and to do that consistently so that attorneys know they must be prepared and they must move cases. And then use my experience at the Office of Administrative Hearings and a similarly high-volume docket where I must write written decisions to conclude cases to timely prepare my decisions, much in the way that my co-nominee described, and to circulate drafts and to be responsive to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Noti?
Thank you. So in the last 7 years as a magistrate judge, I've heard over 50,000 cases. And the way I've been able to get through that high volume of cases is by being efficient, by asking key questions to get to the heart of the matter from the litigants, by calendaring cases efficiently and setting and following scheduling orders, and by being a team player and working with the other colleagues on the court.
Ms. Ali Khan, you've served as an advocate for most of your career. If you could let the committee know what challenges that you may anticipate facing as you shift from your role as an advocate to the role of a impartial adjudicator? And how are you preparing for this transition if you are confirmed?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I've spent the bulk of my career as an advocate, and I recognize that the role of an advocate is quite different from the role of a neutral arbiter. As an advocate, you zealously represent your client and you make the best arguments you can consistent with the law and the state of the record. As an advocate, you need to have as an adjudicator, you need to have an open mind. You need to research the law thoroughly, you need to hear the parties' arguments, and then you need to consult with your colleagues to determine what the answer is and how it's dictated by the law. I think I've had the opportunity to practice some of those skills in my role as Solicitor General because as an institutional litigant, we often have to take a fresh look on cases when they come up on appeal and weigh the consequences. Do we take this appeal? Do we wait for another one? Where does the law really fall on this? And so I think I've had some experiences as Solicitor General that have prepared me. I also would draw upon the 2 years I spent clerking, where I learned from 2 federal judges how to decide cases without regard to any personal preferences and just follow the law and see where it takes you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ranking Member Portman has joined us via video. Ranking Member Portman, you're recognized for your questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I was thinking that the ranking member today, who is James Langford, would go first. So I'll be very brief to allow Senator Langford to have an opportunity to speak. I've appreciated the testimony this morning, and I've looked at the background of all 3 of our candidates. They have good experience both in law, in the nonprofit sector in one case, and all of you who contributed to your community in various ways. I appreciate that. One of the things that was raised in our previous hearings with other judges is the issue of safety and violence in the District of Columbia, the increase in crime, and the role that these courts play. Mayor Bowser, as you know, perhaps made a comment that she thought that the backlog was creating a safety issue for the District of Columbia and expressed some concerns about, again, the amount of criminal activity and the increase really at an alarming rate. So I'd like all 3 of you to address that, if you would, understanding that every part of our government plays a role, and the courts are not going to play the singular role, the only role here, but an important role in ensuring that justice is done and that criminals are prosecuted properly to try to act as a deterrent to crime. So could you speak to the issue of crime in the District of Columbia and what your intent would be should you be confirmed?
Thank you, Senator. I agree that crime is a problem in the district. As a longtime district resident, any crime is unacceptable. As a judge, I think the role is to take the cases that come before you, but one way in which I think, if I was fortunate enough to be confirmed, that I could assist is by quickly resolving criminal cases. While there are Speedy Trial Act concerns that come into play when things are in trial court, there's no set time frame for deciding criminal appeals. So I would make it a priority to swiftly handle those cases because that brings closure and finality to the victim. It provides certainty to the public that public safety is being protected. And so I would think it would be very important to prioritize those cases.
I appreciate that response. And that also goes to the issue of the backlog, over 10,000 cases, as I understand. So the expedited reviews are really important. Other thoughts from the other 2 candidates?
Thank you, Senator. I agree completely. And as a father, resident, homeowner in the district, with my family, no amount of crime is acceptable. In addressing the crime, I would work diligently, as I do at my current court, to move those cases and attack the backlog. I think that's the biggest thing we can do. The D.C. Court of Appeals has been without a full complement of judges for at least 8 years now, and at this time has less than half of the senior judges assisting the active judges that they had at the time of the oldest vacancy. I think if I'm so blessed to be confirmed, I can take my skills managing a high-pressure and high-volume docket and ability to come up to speed quickly on the law and contribute in clearing that backlog and speedily processing criminal cases. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Portman, for your question. I agree with my fellow nominees, and I want to address more of your backlog question. when I was appointed, when I was assigned to the Family Division in January of 2020, the pandemic hit in March and we shut down our courtrooms. And by May 2020, I had my first virtual trial. And by August, I had a full virtual courtroom. And by October of 2020, had cleared entirely the backlog in my caseload through collaborating with the other judges and by being efficient and scheduling tightly. So I think that I can bring those skills to the position of an associate judge if fortunate enough to be confirmed.
Thank you, Ms. Doty. Those skills will be needed. And I appreciate, again, all of you being here. I'm going to ask that any additional questions I have or questions for the record to be able to get to the other members, including Senator Langford. And Senator Langford, thank you for being the ranking member today in your subcommittee role. It's appropriate in my view, and I hope we can move expeditiously ourselves. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Portman, and Ranking Member Langford has continued to defer to other members who wish to ask questions. Senator Carper, you are now recognized for your question.
You should. I don't know what's.
We see you, Senator Carper.
Yep.
And we hear you. We hear you as well.
Oh, good. Great. Thank you. When I was privileged to serve as the governor of Delaware for 8 years, it was my responsibility to nominate individuals to serve on Delaware's actually very highly regarded Supreme Court and our Court of Chancery. In considering potential candidates, I look for a number of attributes, and my guess is our colleagues do as well. One of them is sound moral character, and others a complete knowledge of the law, a willingness. The third would be a willingness to listen to both sides of an argument. Another's judicial temperament, and a last one would be the ability to make difficult decisions with sound reasoning. Ms. I want to make sure I pronounce it. Ali Khan, is that right? Is Ali Khan, is that it?
Yes, Senator. Ali Khan.
Very good. Thank you. Judge Howard and Judge Noti, is it Noti?
Noti, yes, Senator.
Okay. Thank you all for being with us today. Thank you for your interest in serving in these roles. Could each of you take a minute apiece to simply discuss the importance of having these attributes as a judge, and the ones that I've just mentioned, the five I just mentioned, and how would you bring them to bear in the District of Columbia Superior Court and the Court of Appeals if you are confirmed? One at a time, please. Ms. Ali Khan.
Thank you, Senator. I believe those attributes are essential to being a successful judge. I think it's important to recognize that while for a judge, the courtroom is a home away from home, for many litigants, it's their only interaction with the judicial system. And so it's very important to make sure litigants know that they are heard and that they are respected, and that regardless of the outcome of the case, they've had the ability to present their views. Now, of course, judging involves making difficult decisions. The law will take you in directions that are going to hurt one party or another. And so I think the judge's duty in that circumstance is to clearly and concisely explain the rationale for why the law dictates the particular result. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that response. Judge Howard, please, same question.
Thank you, Senator. Judges have an ethical duty to model those traits that you described. The canons of judicial ethics require judges to behave in a manner that brings respect and dignity to the court and enhances the faith that people have in the court and in our decisions. As a judge, the appearance of impropriety on its own, not actual impropriety, is enough to have a violation of our ethics. In my practice as a judge for over 7 years and as an administrative law judge, where we have the additional duty to complete the record and where we often hear from people who don't have the representation of attorneys, it's been our duty to model those traits and to make sure that individuals can not only meaningfully participate, but that they know they're heard. And part of that is in addressing their arguments and getting timely justice out to them.
Thank you for your question, Senator. Being neutral and fair really is the heart of what judges do, and having an appropriate demeanor is also crucial to public confidence in the administration of justice. And I would, if fortunate enough to be confirmed, continue to use the judicial skills I've gained so far as a magistrate judge. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for those responses. My next question would be, each of your opening statements, all three of you mentioned that you worked on, I think, not hundreds but thousands of cases throughout your career working in the District of Columbia's courts. Meanwhile, the average time between vacancy and confirmation for the last 5 judicial nominees to the D.C. Superior Court, I think it's nearly 3 years. And for the Court of Appeals, I think the average vacancy lasts over a year. Could each of you just take a moment to explain how these longstanding judicial vacancies affect the ability of D.C. courts to function and process cases in a timely manner? And I'd also ask, if you could maybe provide an example of how these vacancies have affected your work in your current jobs. Go ahead. Ms. Doty, would you go first?
Thank you, Senator. One of the ways in which the vacancies have affected the daily life of the court is that magistrate judges have taken on even more responsibilities. And so I've been fortunate over the last 7 years to take on more complicated issues, and that's been a key part of the way that the courts have tried to overcome some of the challenges of the vacancies.
Thank you. Judge Howard, same question.
Thank you, Senator. The Court of Appeals vacancies have affected the court and its speed of processing and its backlog, not only with the vacancies with active judges, but unlike many other courts of final appeal, the D.C. Court of Appeals has senior judges as well who are former active judges who take on an active role and utilize their expertise to help the court. The oldest vacancy that's outstanding for the D.C. Court of Appeals, as I stated earlier, is 8 years old, and at that time when that vacancy came open, there were a little over twice as many senior judges as there are today. In terms of how it's affected my work at the D.C. Office of Administrative Hearings, we are an incredibly high-volume court, and many appeals come from our court, and the guidance from those appeals that we wait on is what would be helpful in processing many more cases that are coming up all the time and with new law developing out of the court.
Thank you. Ms. Ali Khan?
My practice has been primarily before the D.C. Court of Appeals for the past 8 years, and in those 8 years, there has never been a full complement of active judges on the D.C. Court of Appeals.
Never? Did you say never? In
Never.
8 years?
In the 8 years that I have been practicing in the Office of the Solicitor General, there has been at least one vacancy, because the vacancy from Judge Oberle was created in 2013, and since then we now have 2 more vacancies, and we have a 4th on the way. And where this affects me and my practice and district residents, frankly, is it delays decision-making, because the D.C. Court of Appeals is one of the highest volume appellate courts in the country, and it's essentially been functioning with one hand tied behind its back. And so I've had cases, expedited cases even, cases that are required to be decided in an expeditious manner by statute, that sometimes take 2 or even 3 years between argument and decision. And that's simply because there's just not enough time for the judges to address the thousands of cases that come before them when they have vacancies and they don't have as many senior judges, as my co-nominee mentioned, as they used to. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, let me say to my colleagues, thank you all for your responses. I think it's atrocious that we have vacancies 2, 3, 4 years and longer in these courts. And we're not the solution here. We're part of the problem. And the other part of the problem is that the District of Columbia, they don't have the ability to select and confirm their own judges. We need to change that, and we can change that, and I hope we will change that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Carper. Ranking Member Langford, you're recognized for your questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you again going through this process. I want to ask a question that's similar to what you've been asked before, dealing with the backlog, but this one is particular to how you handle attorneys that are coming in front of you that perpetually ask for a delay, an extension. They need more time to be able to gather more facts and information. How do you handle making sure that the people in front of you actually get justice and not just have an attorney that's just delaying and didn't spend the prep time? All of you described your prep time. What I want to know is, how are you holding attorneys to account to make sure they're prepared to actually bring justice to the clients they work with? Just Nodi, let me start with you first.
Thank you for your question, Senator. So it really starts with setting the expectations in the courtroom of what is to be expected by those that appear before you. I can't remember the last time I granted a request for continuance, and so people stop asking for them. As you mentioned, coming to court prepared and ready to hear the cases before you is the key way that we can avoid delayed justice.
Terrific.
Thank you, Senator. I agree with my co-nominee, and it's been my practice, and I alluded to it earlier, to only grant continuances in cases of true necessity. I've found in over 7 years as a judge that while attorneys are incredibly busy, they rise to meet the standard if it's set consistently and they know what to expect.
Okay. Salikhan.
Thank you, Senator. Under the District of Columbia Court of Appeals rules, extensions should only be granted for good cause. And so if I were on a motions panel, I would make sure that extensions were only granted when good cause had been shown. I also would want to make sure that appointed counsel, because there are counsel that are appointed in a lot of civil cases, sometimes go through a process where they get appointed, they withdraw, and new counsel gets appointed, they need time, that we do what we can on the administrative side of the court to make sure that those appointments are, they stick, first of all, and that those counsel who are appointed are going to follow through with the cases and not seek lengthy extensions.
Okay. Salikhan, you've been solicitor already for quite a while there, and you've seen a lot of things come and go and dealt with a lot of things in the mayor's office and all that's happening in the courts. What do you see as the most significant issue that D.C. is facing right now in the courts? I'm fully aware of the backlog and trying to get fully staffed. Beyond that, what are the significant issues that judges can address in this role to be able to help D.C.?
Thank you, Senator. I do think the backlog is the biggest problem.
Right.
When you're seeing a 5-year delay from when an appeal is filed until when an opinion comes down, that causes the public to lose confidence, and it also harms litigants, especially when we're dealing with cases involving child custody, abuse and neglect, criminal cases. There needs to be swift justice. And so I think that is the first, second, third, and fourth biggest problem facing the district. And as a nominee, if I were confirmed, I would hope to be able to swiftly dive into the court's work.
Okay. Mr. Howard, how would you answer that?
I agree with my co-nominee, and if I can be selfish and lean into my background a little bit, as an administrative law judge, I've come into cases across 2,000 cases where it's been a case of first impression, and I wish that I'd had some guidance. There are obviously cases that are priority over these, such as the criminal cases and the backlog that we need to clear, but having a full complement of judges and clearing the backlog will give us time, will give the court time to address issues that may be further on the back burner.
Okay. Just noting, I'm not going to give you that simple question. I want to ask you a different one. How do you handle being the presiding judge of the Family Treatment Court? I can't imagine a more emotional court than what you have handled in the caseload in 50,000 cases that you handled as a magistrate, looking at your own two beautiful children. Although I'm not supposed to call Emmett beautiful. Hey, good-looking guy. Sorry. So as I look at your two kids sitting behind you, I can't imagine what it's like in the caseload that you have handled. So how do you manage that kind of caseload? And if you were to transition to a full-on judge, where would you put that in the days ahead?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your question and your kind words. So I love being a magistrate judge, and it's intense and hard work. And presiding over the Family Treatment Court is a great joy. I get to see families working really hard to reunify. And my role there, although it's intense, is really to continue to apply the facts to the law. And so in the abuse and neglect context, I'm looking at serious issues regarding families, whether it's termination of parental rights or contested adoptions. And it brings me great joy. And I think working with that population will serve me well as an associate judge because it's really the same people and the same litigants with different types of legal issues.
Yeah, very, very, very difficult caseload on that and very emotional caseload to be able to deal with all the different family issues. Salikhan, you, as a solicitor, obviously D.C. deals with a lot of hard issues. There was a hard issue that came up last year that myself and several others were surprised at the way that D.C. handled the issue of religious liberty, and specifically the accommodation for houses of worship during the pandemic time period, where houses of worship were limited to 100, but if you're at the farmer's market outside, there wasn't a limitation for you. But if you're a church meeting outside, there was a limitation. There was a lot of push and pull in the conversation. I'm not going to ask you private conversations for what you had with leadership during that time period, but this issue of religious liberty is a really big one. As you know, RFRA has a balancing test that the government's only involved if it absolutely has to, and it has to be able to honor that. So my question for you really circles around how you're going to deal with this compelling governmental interest and to be able to balance this out, because you're going to deal with a lot of issues, and one of them may come up pretty quickly on a vaccine mandate to an individual, and someone says they have a religious accommodation request. How do you evaluate religious accommodation requests and a balance of that for those individuals on this type of issue in religious liberty?
Thank you, Senator. I take religious liberty very seriously, and as a covered entity under RFRA, the District of Columbia does have to show a compelling government interest and show that it's narrowly tailored if even a neutral law is going to substantially burden another's religion. And so that is a standard that I would faithfully apply if I were to be confirmed. You mentioned the mayor's orders. I want to note that the mayor and the attorney general are independently elected. And so the mayor's orders come from the mayor's office of legal counsel. Obviously, in my position as Solicitor General, I represent the mayor as a client, but I myself was not involved in the creation of any of those orders. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Howard, I can't imagine how much fun it is to have a last name of Howard and attending Howard University. I hope you used that time period well to be able to have some extra swing on campus. You also have the unique position of being one of the few people on the planet that both Joe Biden and Donald Trump agree on. That you've been nominated by both to be able to come to this position, which also means you've been in the queue a very, very long time. You've had a lot of time to be able to think about this. I appreciate your longevity to be able to walk through a very difficult, long process in this. I don't have a particular question with that, but I just want to be able to say to you specifically, thanks for a very, very long wait in that process.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Thank you, Ranking Member Langford. Senator Hawley, you are recognized for your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the nominees for being here. Congratulations on your respective nominations. Ms. Alicon, if I could start with you, I want to pick up where Senator Langford left off just a moment ago and ask you about these lockdown orders that the District of Columbia held were unlawful. Just to follow up on something, did you have any role in the policy of these lockdown orders in terms of creating the lockdown orders?
Thank you, Senator. No, I did not. The mayor's office of legal counsel passed those orders.
Okay, and did you have any role in the litigation? I see that you weren't formally listed on the briefs, but I just want to be sure, were you involved in the litigation anyway? Can you pull your microphone a little closer to you? I think I'm having trouble hearing you.
Absolutely, Senator. Yes, as with all high-profile litigation, I was aware of it and I was involved. And as Solicitor General, I make a decision of whether or not to take affirmative appeals from adverse decisions. And I think it is a matter of public record and not betraying any client confidences to say that the district did not appeal the preliminary injunctions in the Capitol Hill Baptist case and the companion archdiocese case.
Do you agree with the federal district court's conclusion in that case that the restrictions violated the free exercise of religion?
In light of ethical duties to my clients, I don't think I can comment on whether the district court's opinion, in my view, was correct or not. I can say, as a matter of public record, the District of Columbia did not appeal those preliminary injunctions.
The Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, similarly struck down restrictive lockdown measures by New York and California in separate cases. Let me ask you this. What do you understand to be the current framework doctrinally for evaluating claims of religious discrimination?
Sure. So, Senator, I think it depends. If we're in the RFRA context, then a neutral law that substantially burdens religion will be subject to strict scrutiny and has to satisfy a compelling government interest and be narrowly tailored to that effect. Outside of the RFRA context, in the cases like Tandon and others that the Supreme Court was considering, they were applying the test set forth in Lukumi, which is that even a facially neutral law can have a burden on religion, and if so, then strict scrutiny is triggered. I think what we learned from Tandon and the other cases, which were the first time the court was able to address the question of how COVID-19 regulations interacted with religious liberty, was that if any secular activity is treated more fairly than a religious activity, that raises the bar and strict scrutiny applies.
So let me come back to the District of Columbia case. Given what the district court found there and its holding, and given what the United States Supreme Court has found in the Brooklyn Diocese case and the South Bay United Pentecostal case and others, what's your? Let me put it to you this way. I mean, do you regard this issue now as settled? These cases as controlling? Are you prepared to follow this as precedent established case law?
Thank you, Senator. With the caveat that in the district that RFRA applies, I think, yes, the standard has been set.
Which ought to heighten the protections.
Which is, yes, has heightened protections. But I fully understand that the Lukumi test, which has been reaffirmed time and again from Fulton and then was applied in the context of COVID-19 in Tandon and other cases, absolutely is the framework. It's been the framework, and it's one that I would faithfully apply if I were presented with such a question, if I were fortunate enough to be confirmed.
Well, I appreciate that answer. I've been in the position, or akin to the position that you hold now. I was the Attorney General of my state, so I understand that sometimes, and similarly in my state, I was independently elected, and so the governor and other officers of the state were my clients, and you don't pass the laws. You defend the laws. That's your job, and you don't always get to. In fact, you never get to choose what the laws are. You defend them. So I understand the position that you were in as it regards to your client, and so fair enough. I do want to say, for the record, in light of the Capitol Hill case, the Capitol Baptist case, and the district court's opinion there, I think that what the district attempted to do was very wrong. It was contrary to law. I think that it was unjust. And the district court's opinion, which I've read a number of times now, is very unequivocal. It's very, very strong language. And the idea that you would single out people of faith and say that they can't even meet outdoors if they're masked and they limit their gatherings, but yet other secular, non-religious groups and entities can do that, that's hugely problematic. So it sounds to me like you appreciate that because you recognize the case law that is controlling on this now. And as we've now discussed and I think established, the U.S. Supreme Court has weighed in on this. But I can't let this issue pass without noting that and saying again how deeply, deeply troublesome I find it. And again, I don't blame you for your office for defending the law. That's you're supposed to do that. I'm glad you didn't take an appeal. I think that was the right decision. And hopefully that speaks well about your evaluation of the case. Let me ask you about something different. You were counsel of record, I believe, for an amicus brief on behalf of the District of Columbia and 17 states in the Brnovich case. Do you remember this case? It was on behalf of or in support of the DNC, their position in the Brnovich case.
Yes, Senator.
So that caught my attention because usually, I mean, that case was about Arizona's interest as a state in regulating its own elections, and typically states support other states. D.C. is not a state, but the D.C. as an entity, along with as its own independent entity, often it stands with other states in supporting federalism concerns. You didn't do that here. I just am curious as to why you felt it was important to lead this effort on behalf of the DNC and the DNC's position, which the Supreme Court rejected. So the court did not agree with your position in the Brnovich case, but just walk me through why you felt it was important to weigh in here against federalism and in favor of uniform federal standards that the Supreme Court ultimately rejected.
Thank you, Senator. The district wanted to provide the experience of states to show that while elections are a matter of state concern, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act does not impose a substantial burden on them. So we were writing a brief from experience, as many states do, to provide context to the Supreme Court of how a particular law plays out on the ground. The factors that we focused on in the Supreme Court were that it is a fact-specific, context-specific, evidence-specific, totality of the circumstances inquiry, and ultimately the Supreme Court did not rule in favor of the party we were supporting, but they endorsed, in the majority opinion, the totality of the circumstances test. So I see the amicus brief we filed as being consistent with the ultimate holding of the case.
Just my time is just about expired, but can I just ask you, do you think voter ID requirements are illegal?
I have not had occasion to consider that question in my 15 years of appellate practice.
You don't have any opinion on it at all? I mean, it's been much litigated. It was at issue in part in the Brnovich case.
No, Senator, I don't.
Do you think it's unreasonable for states and counties to require a form of voter ID in order to vote?
Senator, I would not want to give the impression that I had prejudged any issue were I fortunate enough to be confirmed. And I can assure you that my personal beliefs have never come into play when I'm considering the advocacy positions of my client or if I were to consider any law that were to come before me.
Well, if that's the case, shouldn't the answer be really easy? Shouldn't the answer be that they're absolutely not illegal given the Crawford case?
Senator, the answer would be that if presented with such a case, I would review the law, including Crawford, and I would apply it faithfully.
So you recognize Crawford as good law and controlling?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I might have some more questions for you on that. I'm sorry, Mr. Howard and Ms. Nodi, that I did not get to you. You probably aren't sorry. But congratulations also on your nominations. I'll have some questions for you for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. The nominees have filed responses to biographical and financial questionnaires. Without objection, this information will be made part of the hearing record, with the exception of the financial data for which is on file and available for public inspection in the committee offices. The hearing record will remain open until 12 p.m. tomorrow, December 3rd, for the submission of statements and questions for the record. This hearing is now adjourned.